Procrastination won't just wreck your work or study, it can literally destroy your life. And so in this video, you'll discover my new 4-step system. You'll understand what makes it so powerful and effective, and you'll learn how to implement it in only a few minutes. To start though, we need to discover whether you're actually procrastinating at all. And that might seem like a strange thing to say, but stay with me and I'll explain. Procrastination is a form of self-regulation where we prioritize short-term mood repair over the long-term pursuit of intended actions. So we procrastinate to avoid the negative feelings associated with the task. But we do this at the expense of not completing the task. Often we might decide not to do something right now because we're managing our time, or we might be dealing with competing priorities, or there may be many other reasons why it's the right thing to do to leave the task for now. Put simply, there are lots of reasons why we might put off doing a task to another time, and those might all be really good reasons. And that isn't procrastination. Procrastination is leaving things that we really don't want to do. Most procrastinators will tell you that as the deadline looms, they panic and put in the work. And that was certainly how I looked at things in the past. I would always get the work done, and I would tell myself that it's actually given me more free time. But there's a really big hole in this thinking, which I'll go through at the end of this video. In the meantime, I'll just say that procrastination is an understandable strategy, but it's probably the biggest thing that's holding you back right now. So let's get straight in to the 4-step system. Start with a small step in the right direction. Stage 1, take a peek. If you're procrastinating on a task, you'll recognize that because when you start to think about it, you'll immediately push it to one side. You know that as soon as you start to think about that task, you will experience strong negative emotion. When this happens to me, I feel these emotions right here in my stomach. I feel awful, and I'll do just about anything to avoid those feelings. So stage 1 of the system is just to notice the task and notice how you feel in relation to it. We're not going to address the task at this point, so we can relax, push those emotions away, and just focus on making a note of the task and how we're feeling towards it. And at this point, where you've noted down the task, you can tell yourself that you've taken a step in the right direction. And as we do that, it's really helpful to imagine ourselves as our own coach. Any coach working with you would take a positive and an understanding approach to procrastination. They would start by recognizing how hard these things are and how normal it is for people to procrastinate over things as difficult as the task you've got ahead of you. And so you can tell yourself that, acting as your own coach in an understanding and caring way, you can tell yourself that this is hard, it's okay, and that anyone would find this difficult. Really feel the compassion within yourself. And finally, in this first step, once we've found that compassion and forgiveness in ourselves, and while we're still taking a peek at the task, it's really helpful to try and find the meaning associated with that task for you. So it's really helpful to think about why completing that task is important to you. What will completing it mean to you? Try and find some meaning in the task that will make you feel positive about yourself or good about your life. And that's it, that's stage 1, that's taking a peek. We notice and note the task and our feelings around it. We remind ourselves with compassion and forgiveness that wherever we are with the task, it's okay. And then we look for meaning in relation to completing the task. It will only take you a couple of minutes to work through these steps, but while it's great to face up to having procrastinated about something, you're probably feeling that you haven't actually done anything about it. And that's where the next stage of the system comes in, where you create the opportunity. And there are just 2 things to do to create the opportunity. The first is easy. Get out your calendar or whatever you use to manage your time, and let's get going at time blocking. Time blocking is the easiest way to give yourself that little push to get going on a task. The first thing to do is think about how much time the task might take you. then double it. If you can't think that way, or if the task is too big, or if you think it's going to take too long, then just take it day by day. The key is to allow yourself plenty of time, to overschedule. So you've blocked out loads of time, but there's actually something else you can do to give yourself a further nudge to use each block of time towards the task. The way to give yourself that extra nudge is to take a moment to pause and reflect on the next couple of steps in the journey towards completing this task. I want you to think about your future self at that time. Really pause and think about how you will feel tomorrow or next month if you don't start the task now. Then think about how you'll feel tomorrow or next month if you do start the task now, and if you've made some progress on it. Because research shows that recognizing the effects that your efforts have on your future self can really add strong positive emotions to counterbalance the negative emotions you're feeling around the task. And once you've done that, you're on your way. You've taken 2 giant steps forward. You've time blocked and you've stepped into the shoes of your future self. And it's worth reflecting on how far you've already come, because you've faced your fear, you've worked out why the task is important to you, you've scheduled in plenty of time to work on it, and you've realised just what it'll mean to your future self if you've scheduled in some time and got started on it now. But all of that will be for nothing if you don't actually get started on the task. And so now it's time to clear the path ahead. Stage 3, clear the path ahead. So imagine you've got to your first scheduled block of time, and the question now is, do you feel you can start the task? If you do, then let's get going. But more realistically, you've probably found that you don't feel like you want to start the task. And the first thing to do here is just to gently remind yourself it's okay to feel like that. It's perfectly natural that that is how you're going to want to feel. And then, instead of distracting yourself with social media or all of the hundreds of other things you had in mind to do instead of the task, pull out your journal or a piece of paper and start writing. Because here we're going to explore our feelings and the beliefs we have behind them. And now we're using the time you've allocated for the task to write about your feelings, write about the task and the challenges it's throwing up for you, and just keep writing. You need to be writing and including actions, perhaps, including all the things that are part of that task. Just writing them out will help you break down the task into manageable parts. And you really need to keep coming back to how you're feeling about the task and why you're feeling that way. What is it that's causing the feeling? And if you keep doing this, every time you get that feeling, you write out what it is, you pause, you sit with it for a moment and try to work out why you're feeling that way. You'll start to recognize the cause of the feeling. It's as if you started to dig for oil. As you dig away at your emotions and the reasons behind them, at some point you'll hit the gusher. Your emotions and the reasons behind them will come flooding out and onto the paper. If you do this, you might use up a lot, perhaps all of your allotted time. And that might happen on a number of the time blocks you've allocated for this project. But then you did give yourself extra time. But at some point, if you do this, you'll feel up to working on the task, or an element of the task, or one of those actions that you've written in your notebook. And doing that is beating procrastination, because you've adopted an alternative approach to regulating your emotions. And if you keep doing that, you will be unstoppable. And you're also at the final stage of the system, because while it's good to get started, it's important to keep moving forward and gain momentum. And so it's time to take a step forward. Stage 4, step forward. So as you go to take the next step in working on your task, you have one of 3 routes available to you. If you still feel nauseous about the action you're about to take, then set yourself a 2-minute timer. Tell yourself you'll just work on it for 2 minutes and then stop if you want to. And after that 2 minutes is up, You can just keep going if you want to, or if you don't feel up to it, then go back to your journal and write your emotions and why you're feeling those emotions, as we did in the previous step. If you're feeling a bit more positive than that, then set yourself a 5-minute timer and see how you go. Or the third route is if you're feeling actually relatively comfortable with this task or this part of the task, in which case set yourself a 25-minute timer, a Pomodoro, work on it for 25 minutes and then take a break. Just taking a step forward, however small that step is real progress, and you should be proud of yourself. The really great thing about using the system is that you will get better and better at not procrastinating. Each time you use it, you will replace your procrastination with a better way of managing your emotions, a method that will make you unstoppable. And I say that because procrastination can literally ruin your life. Because even if panic sets in when you near a deadline and it forces you to complete a task, that completely disregards the long-term goals and long-term strategies that we're procrastinating over. These are things with no deadlines to panic over. They are tasks and goals hiding in plain sight. But when our go-to strategy is to procrastinate, we don't think about our long-term goals. And that can have a serious effect on our health and on our lives. When we procrastinate, we trade the future for the present. And it really is a terrible trade to make. So, as you make notes for the 4 stages of this system, I encourage you to take a few minutes to think about your goals for your life, for your work, for your relationships, for your health, for your finances. Start to identify what you feel worst about. If you can start to get them on a list, then you can start to take a peek at them. And if you can do that, your life really will take a turn for the better. Thanks for watching. See you on the next video.